We live in a world saturated with sex. It sells our products, drives our media, and dominates our culture. Yet beneath that surface obsession lies a deep, unacknowledged confusion. We have taken the vast, complex energy of human consciousness and forced it to tear itself into two rigid, opposing streams, male and female. We've tethered our entire psychological identity to the basic biology of reproduction. Over centuries, we drafted a strict, unwritten rulebook. We assigned the intellect, logic, scientific inquiry, and aggressive action exclusively to the masculine category. To be a man in this framework means to conquer, to build, and to remain relentlessly objective. On the other side of the ledger, we placed intuition, emotion, and nurturing. These became the exclusive domain of the feminine. We treated these traits as passive forces that needed to be managed and controlled by logic. This division creates an immediate psychological crisis. A man who feels deep empathy or artistic passion often buries those feelings, terrified they make him appear weak. Meanwhile, a woman possessing sharp analytical logic or fierce ambition often softens those traits to avoid being labeled aggressive. The damage ripples outward, punishing anyone who steps outside the lines. Highly creative people, who naturally draw from a wide spectrum of traits, often feel alienated. Those with different sexual orientations find themselves isolated, convinced that their natural affections are wrong, simply because their behavior doesn't match the culturally approved blueprint for their biological hardware. Using our reproductive organs to define the boundaries of our minds is a purely artificial construct. It is a psychological cage. By forcing ourselves to choose a side, we fracture our potential, living as fractions of the people we are actually equipped to be. The philosopher Jane Roberts, through the Seth material, presented a radical alternative to this divided view. The core premise is that the inner self, the psyche itself, possesses absolutely no gender. Instead of a boy's brain or a girl's brain, the psyche operates as a vast, unified repository of universal human capacities. Logic, empathy, aggression, and nurturing exist in a fluid pool. They only become separated when we artificially sort them into labels. Biological sex did not evolve to dictate a psychological blueprint or map out a specific career path. It developed to ensure the physical survival and reproductive flexibility of our species. The body is a vehicle equipped for specific physical tasks, not a rigid boundary for the mind. When we mistake a reproductive mechanism for an entire psychological identity, we blind ourselves to our own nature. We confuse the physical equipment required to populate a planet with the conscious awareness required to understand it. To understand how we trapped ourselves in this binary, we have to look back at early human history. As humanity began to build highly specialized, ego-driven civilizations, we felt a need to distance ourselves from nature and our animal instincts. We took the traits associated with emotion and instinct, labeled them feminine, and tried to conquer them with the logic we labeled masculine. Classical societies codified this split in stone. The Greeks and Romans elevated aggressive, conquering male deities, institutionalizing divided gender roles. They actively devalued intuition and the natural world, writing myths that championed the intellect's triumph over emotion. As these traits were partitioned, the definition of intimacy narrowed. If emotion and nurturing were confined exclusively to the feminine, then deep connection became synonymous with the act of reproduction. Over time, we stopped viewing love as a broad human capacity and began seeing it as a byproduct of biological sex. Yet our actual psychological heritage is vastly different. We possess an inherent, boundless capacity to love, connect, and cooperate with anyone. This deep devotion forms the glue of societies and civilizations, completely independent of whether or not it produces children. Because we equate affection with sexuality, society panics at the sight of boundless love. We become terrified of platonic touch, intense friendships, or deep emotional vulnerability, quickly forcing all expressions of love into the narrow funnel of sexual reproduction. By restricting this natural drive for cooperation to a purely biological function, we lose the very mechanism that allows a species to thrive. We have become terrified of our own natural capacity for devotion and connection. Defining yourself solely by your gender or your sexual orientation is an act of self-sabotage. It guarantees that half of your innate human potential remains permanently locked away behind an arbitrary cultural wall. Reintegrating the traits we call masculine and feminine does not destroy your personal identity. It completes it. It allows the intellect and the intuition to stop fighting each other and begin working in tandem. When scientists are permitted to embrace intuitive leaps alongside strict logic, you get a more effective intellect. Albert Einstein frequently relied on imaginative traits culturally coded as feminine to formulate theories that step-by-step logic could never have reached on its own. This same integration allows women to wield logic, assertiveness, and ambition. They can lead nations and drive scientific breakthroughs, becoming empowered without surrendering their identity to a stereotype. Once the mind is whole, love itself is liberated. It can be expressed through artistic creation, unwavering friendship, and platonic devotion. You can finally connect deeply with the people around you, entirely free of guilt or mandatory sexual connotations. You are not a collection of checkboxes or stereotypes. You are a complete consciousness exploring physical reality. When you drop the effort of maintaining these artificial borders, you finally encounter the full, undivided scale of your own consciousness.